Hey guys, let's talk a little behind the scenes of my super siblings writing process. So, last time I talked about writer's block, how I was struggling with some motivation and getting some things done and putting things down on my page and really just powering through because I didn't know where the story was going to go. And I forced myself to write a list of things to at least get something into my story arc. And this week, this time, I've been able to develop that a little bit better. And so that writer's block has passed. So I'm going to share where I'm at with the script right now, and you can kind of see what's happening. I'm getting into chapter two and chapter three and chapter four, trying to develop what happens next. And so as that happened, I listed out things that I knew needed to happen. So I wanted them to be at a turkey trot event in Bay City. The family was going to go, and I wanted them to have this race because I think it set up a challenge for both of the super siblings and their parents and the grandparents as the story progresses. And this is meant to be a beginning story to kind of set the table for the rest of the story later on. What I tend to do is use something that's happened. And so a turkey trot is something that I've done with the family. We've run that in the past, and I am not a runner at all. But I thought it was fun to kind of walk the 5K and check it out. Well, here we have this same kind of thing happening in this story. And to me, that's a good place to start. I always start with something I've experienced because that helps me develop the idea. Also, what's important in the story is to come up with some jokes. And so this is where, honestly, a little bit of self-reflection. I put some of myself in there. So the dad is rushing and annoyed that the rest of the family isn't ready yet and trying to get them to the event, while the wife is saying, "What are you worried about? It's all good. We're early, blah, blah, blah." And then what occurred to me was a silly joke where uh, James says, my dad always said, if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. And then next comment is going to be the punchline, which is grandma saying, I've never heard him say that. Your dad's always late. So a little joke that I infused in that little spot. And as I'm moving along, I'm trying to think of the setup. Okay, what's going to happen? Why is Courtney going to be upset? How is she going to want to express her powers? What's Conrad going to do? Um, how is that going to develop and play itself out? And so, on the one hand, I thought, Conrad is a little bit like Dash from The Incredibles, where he has this superpower and the super speed. So he's going to have to throttle it back. He can't really race to his full potential. At the same time, you've got Courtney, who doesn't want to be there at all. She's being sassy. She's being upset in the morning. She's really dragging her feet. She doesn't want to participate. And so, is that going to lead to her using her powers to get out of it? Also, later on in the story, I realized I need to set up some characters that are going to show up in the future. And one of these is a rivalry for Courtney and a little bit of a love interest for Conrad. So you've got this family that comes into play of these two daughters. And so you've got an older daughter that Conrad has a crush on and a younger daughter that Courtney is butting heads and always at odds with. So in that scenario, I've used this character, Jocelyn, in the past as kind of a foil for Courtney. When I was doing the comic strip, Jocelyn was always her rival, always the prettiest, smartest, the best elementary kid around, and Courtney always had her as her arch enemy. And that usually instigated some kind of shenanigans with Courtney using her powers. And so I knew that had to come into play. Plus, I introduced this new character, Jenny, which had kind of shown up in my writing before, but I wanted to include her this time as Conrad's love interest. So he's trying to figure out, okay, how do I impress her while using my powers, but not using my powers because I can't just out and out show everybody that I can beat everyone, while at the same time I don't want to, make a mistake and look stupid. And so that's going to come into play. So when I start putting those things together and now I start typing, that's when it starts to develop. And sometimes what happens is the dialogue starts happening. And so I start writing in the character's voice. And so here's a little snippet between Conrad and Grandpa. Grandpa says, "Remember, Conrad, today isn't about winning. It's about finishing the race." As Grandpa said with a knowing nod. Then he whispered, with your super speed, you can beat anyone in this race, even me. But you'll have to do the right thing and throttle it back so others can win. So here, Grandpa's kind of talking to Conrad. Well, that whole setup is just a bit of dialogue that occurred to me. I started typing, and then my mind kind of thinks of the response. Okay, what does Conrad say back? And then, oh, Jenny walks by. That totally disarms Conrad. So he's agreeing with Grandpa, yeah, I'm going to slow down, but at the same time, I want to impress her, right? That's a little tension. So it's fun to me when writing, again, children's books, where this little story develops. And I can't explain the process other than it just becomes like a running movie in my mind, and I try to record what I see and what I hear. But I have to do that a number of times. Like I go through the process, write something down, then I realize, oh, you forgot this, you need to do that. I do it again, and I reread it and I edit it. And so for me, writing also includes a little bit of distance. So I can't just write it perfectly. It has to be rewritten and edited. Again, I'm also thinking visually, thinking about what's going to come into play as a visual that's going to be funny. And one more that popped up was I thought about the fact that in a turkey trot and kind of like a walking 5K, 1K scenario, there's going to be a group that's running, and then there's going to be a group that's walking. And so, of course, I wanted to put Grandma and Grandpa in the walking group with Courtney because she doesn't want to be there. And one of the things that occurred to me is you have the walkers and the walkers, meaning those elderly people who are on the four-legged category where they're walking with their walkers and their canes. And so I want to figure out a funny turn of phrase to use that joke, but I can also think of it in the image, showing those those walkers, those elderly folks trying to get through the race, kind of getting in the way. So that's how my mind works, and I feel like I'm in a better place this time around than I was last time. By forcing myself to list and lay out some of the things that I wanted to accomplish in those three chapters, I'm now able to work on that skeleton and flesh it out and finish up the story. And as I write it, funny things occur to me. And so I try to include those because ultimately I want some gags, I want some silliness in the story as it goes. And so once this little part of the story concludes, then I'll be able to move on to the main event, the main adventure story to show where the kids use their powers in their super alter egos. In this first little story, the kids are going to use their powers secretly. But then in the last part of the book is where they really fully come out with their costumes and so on, and have their main event. Right? So that's what's happening this time around. That's how the story progresses. Maybe that helps you as you think about writing your story, thinking about your process. It's all about process. Develop your process and work through the rough times. Keep going, and you're going to gain confidence and you're going to be able to finish something. And I hope it turns out awesome. All right. Talk to you next time.